Welcome to WADE 2023. Here's your WADE president. And we're going to change up the schedule a little bit. We're going to have our keynote speaker first. He has another obligation because he's a superstar. So he's going to be playing at Sun Mountain Lodge, so he needs to get there. So we're moving him ahead. So, Ken Bevis. He is a stewardship biologist for the Washington Department of Natural Resources, WADNR, small horse landowner office. Originally from Virginia, has lived in Washington State since 1986. He has worked for the Yakama Indian Nation, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife for 15 years, and now WADNR for 10 years. But you notice we've never worked for a conservation district. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to let him come on up because he's got a lot of his life to share with you. So thank you.
Okay. Can you hear that there? No. Yeah. Where's my sound guy? Okay.
He's coming.
So hello, everybody. I appreciate that. I have not worked for a conservation district yet. I like that. And I've worked around conservation districts, check, in and out for years, thank you. And I have to say I have the deepest admiration for what you and me do, which is what I get to speak to today. So here we go. How's that? Working. I love this place. So I want to say, Craig Nelson, Craig, you got the end of this, Craig. So yeah. You owe me 1,000 wildlife trees. Okay, and I was also told to be cautious about poker night. I'm not sure who's invited, but it won't be indoors because you've got in big trouble repeatedly. Okay, so nice to see everybody here. I think this is cool. I can walk around. Can you just go like this? Well, if I stay back a little bit. Okay, and we in the committee, and I appreciate schedule. Yeah, I'll be truthful. It is Sun Mountain. It's not because I'm any good. It's because I screwed up my calendar. I was supposed to be there today, but I thought it was yesterday. So okay, but it'll be fun. It's a little thing. Okay, is this okay, Dan? Okay. So we had a discussion with the committee about a topic for this keynote, and usually I'm giving talks about forest wildlife or fish, you know, the technical stuff. But this one's a little bit different. And I realized, Craig, that as you get along a little bit, your hair turns white. A couple things happen. One is your knees start to hurt, you sleep not as good, etc. And supposedly you get wisdom in that white hair. Not true, but you'll have more stories. Let's just put it that way. So we came up with this topic, and you know, is it a heart rot? And it's a reflection on what we do and how we do it. Worked a minute ago, what did we do? They turn it off? Excuse me, technical? Jan, bail me out here. I need this thing. So we were thinking about our experiences as natural resource professionals and the different ways that we experience our career paths. Oh, push the thing back in there. Let's see if that's it. And our commonalities in working in natural resources, you know, in our field. And so that's what I'm reflecting on here in regard to heart rot. And heart rot, as you know, includes who works with trees. No, yeah. How many people work in forests? There's a bunch in here. And I saw Tracy. Yeah, exactly. So heart rot is a condition in a tree where the tree's still alive. You know, basically the middle and everything, but the tree is still functioning as a tree. So we might have heart rot. You want to set the laptop up here and I'll just push the button? Oh, there we go. Hey, did you just make it work?
I have to push.
Okay, that's right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about where are we? I'm going to still hold this just for security. The situation globally, us, and I'm thinking of us as a group. I got two songs. You're not going to know the words to them. but you're gonna know where because they're written up there, making it easy for you. And where we're going with all this stuff. So it's a little bit of a bummer, but we're gonna do it. So where are we? Big picture, we start high. By the way, I'm a lumper, not a splitter. Lazy. So splitters, you gotta work a lot harder. So where are we? So Jan, what if I just kind of nod like that? Yes, here we are. The planet Earth, as we know. There we are right there, halfway to the North Pole. Oh. Now this is hard. And the state of Washington is really cool. And how many of us have traveled around the country? Washington is a very special place. The ocean on the left, big mountains down the middle, the Salish Sea, the dry stuff over there in the left side. You want to try to make that work, Andrew? That would be good. And so, you know, you are here roughly in the middle of the state.
Turn it on.
Oh, yeah. Turn it on. We already did that one. Thank you. You really need tech support sometimes. He said, turn it on. Nice. So anyway, you know, wonderful vegetation, botany, forest, oh God. Acetyl Curtis pictures from a long time, there's a little accent there. And we call this stuff the resource. How do we use that term? Resource. That implies how we humans use it, which has some pretty significant implications about the way we interact with the world. The west side, and I have a wonderful privilege of covering the whole state. So there's these certain forestry types in DNR, and there's some of you work that do the cost shares on the east side, we're doing helping with landowners, like stewardship. I'm the biologist. So I'm like on call, give a talk for the conservation district, Washington State University. They want us out. I don't know anything, we like to talk. But the west side, that crazy west side forest grows back. It's like ripping, it's deep, it's thick. There's a lot of biology happening over there. And all through the state, in relation to these amazing rivers that happen to have these things in a lot of them that come and go, not as many as there used to be. You know, many people are familiar with all the issues. But we're lazy. East side, it's drier, and arguably, it's more physically diverse, only because you can see the difference. All that green stuff dripping over top of each other. There's 19 species of shrubs in front of you, but over here there's 4. You can see them. Anyway, and when that's our own variations of course. So the state of Washington has this tremendous diversity of habitat vegetation that we work in, and there's a lot of really cool birds. So wildlife. We do these field days. The noxious weed person and the soil person and the tree person. Everybody knows wildlife is way charismatic. We all have wildlife stories and we all have favorite critters, that sort of thing. So we got, and insects are wildlife unless they're pest species in there. With a bark eating wildlife? No. How about bark? Oh, yeah. No. Okay, so here's the situation. I'm going to bring us down. The part of this talk is a little bit of a downer, but so the situation, you know, you are here. Think about the Earth. The outfit is devastating. Up there, so it's like nothing. And then the surface, so in the spin out on this amazing book, and light itself, and I said this, it sounded kind of a little teeny. Yeah. Are you guys okay back there? All right, nobody's complaining. Nobody got on that yet. You say, life itself as a process is really amazing. Once it gets going, it's really a thin layer. You know, okay, there's thermal vent critters way down in the living class, but it's mostly right on the surface of the earth. And so it's like this veneer all around the planet. The ocean, a lot of it's in the top of the ocean, you know, before. But it's like it's this happening thing. Life itself is a lake. There's 8. I'll get to that. There's 8 billion people. That's 8 0 0 0. 20, 40, 80, 100, 120, 160, like this matter. Okay. 200 people is what percentage of the 18 billion is that? Pretty low. And it's like, this is you. This is what happened. The sixth time, how many people have ever seen that extinction that we're in the middle of it now? Oh my God. And there's a new term that you understand, Anthropocene, from the Holocene, the last geological epoch. We're getting feedback from over the cameras higher, but CD land. Now in the Netherlands. I gotta go over here.
It's closer to the mic.
Oh, I see. What am I doing wrong? You guys okay? I'm okay. Yeah. So that's an ivory-billed woodpecker, and they existed not very long ago. Check this out. The age of extermination. That was when we killed everything that we wanted. That wasn't very long ago. That picture was taken. You do Google. That's a famous picture. And there's this dude sitting on top of a lot of bisons that they picked up out on the Great Plains where the market hunters and shot them all. They're making fun of it. In 1890, between 1870 and 1874, they killed like 20 million bison. That's when they finished them off. So in 1800, there was 40 million bison. At the turn of the 100 years later, there were less than 5,000. It was really more like 1,200. And they were mostly in Yellowstone National Park. We would have killed them all if they had been able to find them. And no one would have hesitated that that was the right thing to do. That's how we did business. You found it, you killed it, you ate it, you dug it. That's what we did. There were whales there because commercial whaling, you know why there's whales left? They couldn't get them all. It's out there in the ocean. So, that was just this full-on exploitation. And I say we, being civilized human beings, that's how you did business. There was no question. That's what we did. There were probably a lot of really hardworking, honorable people that did these things. So you probably, most of us have studied this. I'm going to jump around here. The eras of, I think my wrong, but epochs, epochs, how do you say it? Epochs? Epochs of human history, all of the Industrial Revolution, the age of extermination. And this age of conservation thing is really interesting because that's the start of what we do. When were the conservation districts formed? In response to the Dust Bowl, right? What year was that? 1939. 1939, right about that same period of time. Who are these two characters? Somebody? John Deere about conservation. But there they stood in Yosemite proposing to create this thing called a national park. What a crazy idea was that? There were people who thought national park was one of the wackiest things you could ever imagine. Just a place where you leave it alone? What? So the age of conservation started early part of the 20th century. You could name them, Gifford Pinchot, where they actually codified actions to slow down the age of extermination. To basically put the kibosh, like hunting seasons. Most of the game departments started right in that same era. Where it wasn't, you didn't just go shoot every deer that there was. Now you had to get a license and all this sort of stuff. So those are the people we stand on their shoulders. We stand on the shoulders of those that establish things like the conservation district, things like the Department of Natural Resources, the game department, all those things came out of that transitional era leading up to today. And so I sort of made this up, but I don't know if there's a name for now. We're calling it kind of the age of sustainability because we're struggling with trying to figure out how to live with the environment in the world. How many of us know something about best management practices or soil conservation or biodiversity or habitat preservation? These are relatively new ideas. It's pretty interesting because this stuff has come on. So the context of where we are is really interesting. And that was what I felt sort of excited about getting to talk about now. So here we go. So, there's conservation. Now more downer, from space, holy smokes. Who's going to be back east? This is why people come live out here. That's nighttime. So There's a lot of stuff going on. We continue to lose habitat. We continue to do, what's the word, development. Standard development really means you scrape off the natural biota and replace it with something. And often it's cultivar and houses continue, it goes on, you know, and so, oh man, how many of us have had, I bet you this is a universal experience, some favorite little spot where you grew up. It's like, oh, that was that corner where those big maple trees were, and you come around the corner, they took that, dang it, we all have that. Yeah, so it continues. And what are the doing? You know, a little bathroom like that. Out in the middle of the is a great place to grow corn. That's soil and land. I grew up for all of its various and sundry, what's the word? You know, challenges is a really good way to make electricity. You're using bloody gravity. Come on. It's so there's some challenges. Now, I just read this one, 95% of animal biomass is now domestic or human. So that's cows, pigs, people, cats, dogs. 95%. So that doesn't mean very much food. Plus spotted owls and shrews. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Oh, remember all this stuff? Remember back when we were in school in the greenhouse? There's a high school. The greenhouse effect, and they have coming in and heats the earth and everything. Who's ever seen that? The Keeling curve, which is out in the middle of the ocean, and they set up this CO2 observatory starting like in the 50s. And this guy at Keeling was like, this would be a good place to measure atmospheric variation. And the up and down in each year is photosynthesis in the summer when the plants are really cranked. And right, there's more CO2 because, Craig, can you write the equation for photosynthesis? Okay, good, nice. I'm gonna just keep picking on you, I like that. Okay, right. Well, that's pretty interesting because the intention of Dr. Keeling was monitoring things, but sure enough, it's still going on. Interesting. And then how about this guy? Name that guy? Al Gore. And people made fun of him like green guy, but Al Gore, an inconvenient truth, what year was that? 1992? He was like, hey, this is coming, and guess what? You know, fire season, hurricanes, bam, 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 bam. So this is pretty cool. Now you've got to know what you're looking at here. This is 2017, the furthest the sea ice ever went back from Alaska. And now, by the time 18 comes along, it's back where it's supposed to be. But they're all learned because if you watch there you go, the Northwest Passage is open. You can sail big ships across the Arctic Ocean. You couldn't do that very many years. But anyway, there you go. So here's more. Yeah, see, now we're dating people. You still have it? That's right. Exactly. Okay, hang on to that. Okay. Yeah, that's the Beatles. I was 1971. It was on vinyl. Remember vinyl? I did. Anyway, so check this out. So in 1970, I finished high school in 75, last century. That's how many people there were in the world, 3.7 billion. And this was from yesterday, when you go on the clock, there's that population going, that's yesterday, holy smokes, that's more than double in every year. Yikes, yikes, sustainability. How are we going to do that? Well, you may remember Pogo, who was a comic strip. This great quote, we've met the enemy, he's us, which is a paraphrase of a Revolutionary War guy, some admiral character in the war guy. Exactly. I like this too. I can scientists on the Rand program model to illustrate a home computer in the year 2004. Pushing that way ahead. The new, however, the new technology will not be economically feasible. That's the scientists will require not yet invented technologies actually work. But 50 years from now, scientific progress is expected to solve these problems with good teletype and Fortran. Who knows Fortran? You do. It's a computer program that's somewhere embedded in your smartphone. Exactly. So check it out. There's a lot happened here. Most of us live in some kind of urban setting. I imagine there's a lot of variability in the type of homesteading here. There are an awful lot of people in the world live in something like that. And there's this. You ever heard of this? Nature deficit. I wrote this whole book about the way that the human mind develops, and that it may actually require random input from nature to develop properly. That it's just part of being hardwired as an animal, because how long ago was it that we were, tribal people living out basically in nature? And so he came up with this term, nature deficit disorder, as an indicator for people who are literally wired a little bit off because they didn't get enough nature. Apparently there's doctors even prescribing forest bathing and going outside as a way to, especially for little kids. So this is an interesting, got everybody all bummed out. Craig, stand up for a second. Greg, is it Greg? Yeah, there you go. So, fight nature deficit disorder, every chance you get, a rattlesnake is a dude is a good way, little kids with binoculars, that's good. So our work, okay, how many of you have ever felt like your work was like combat? That you bumped into these difficult situations where you're trying to convince somebody like Tobin. I used to work with Mike on a lot of different projects, and by the way, you're a warrior buddy, you do good work. Yes, sometimes it's really hard. There's the DNR forester pointing his paint gun at me when I told him that was a fish during the stream. And how about this? Do you ever get overwhelmed with all the stuff that's coming at you? There's so many layers. By the way, this is what your hard drive looks like now, if you actually had paper. So this was obviously a few years back. But that really was my desk, and I couldn't keep up with the permits, and I was really crappy at filing. And my boss never told me. I finally, when I switched on, they just recycled all that. But that's what our workload can look like, and it can feel really difficult. There's lots of information to sort out. Something, and I imagine, anybody else in this room ever have a mail subscription to the Weekly World News? You didn't. This is the one tabloid that always had the countries. So these are some real headlines. And it even said the world's only reliable newspaper. So there you go. Army calls in the airport, so they have a report that they actually brought in beavers. They'll fix the dam. Yes. Before, and like listen, owls failed the IQ test. Right. And notice the type of owl they have there. That's a spotted owl. No wonder they're going to stay. But there are sometimes you get surprises. This is something that yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. All this can lead to what I'm listening to. And so that was our title. And there's other terms, eco grief, just like, oh man, the profound bummer is when you saw the trees on that corner, when you came around the corner, something, just whatever it was. And so, heart rot, though, when I started this, when a tree has heart rot, it's still a tree. It's still a functional tree. It's standing there strong, being a tree. The middle, it's got this going on. So, if you have a heart rot, let's talk. But this can really twist you around and cause you to make an enemy out of that mountain peaks. And so it can all lead to heart rot. Thank you. Yes. There we go. So how do we go forward? So one mechanism is to take on a warrior mode. And so I worked on road management for a little while down in Yakima on those green dot systems, right? And we'd go up and put those green dots up there. Just no sign of, yeah, the hunters off of that road, and sure. And so yeah, my hair was not great. I wasn't wise yet there. No, now, like that. So anyway, how do we go forward? So let's go back. Now this, I say, beginnings and my story and your story. So I know there's going to be similarities here because what I'm leading up to is how did we get here? Is that hard or do you need to talk? And so how did you get here? So you get asked to do a talk like this, you get to talk about yourself. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. Well, there's a little kid camping out with his parents. There's the grown-up after he killed this turkey. He was pretty amazed at that great big grouse. But I'll bet you every one of us has some similarities in our backstory that leads us to be here in this room doing the type of work, having, you know, the type of schooling we had. And so how did we get here? These are some of my early influences. My family went camping. How many people have families that went camping? Look at that, look around, look at that. Almost everybody. How many people go camping themselves now? Nice, nice. Almost everybody, exactly. Here's my beloved mother with a Coleman pump-up stove, my 3 brothers, and she's cooking breakfast. That woman managed to plan these trips. We drove in that seated car with that. When the wind would come, we'd blow over. So nervous. And we did this like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 times a summer, you know, go out, and then they weren't worried about whether the little kid was in danger. I still remember you'd wander off and go do stuff. It was really fun. Then I was a Boy Scout, and now Boy Scouts have a mixed reputation, but I was totally lucky because my scoutmaster liked to go camping, and we went camping once a month. From the time I was 12 to 17, I went on a camp out basically every month with little hot tents and sometimes a backpack and, you know, nature. And so anybody, how many people were in the Scouts, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts? We got a whole bunch. How many did outdoor activities as part of that? I mean, all of us, right? We got little badges and everything. Yeah, and so there's a pretty interesting systematic manner for getting you to do certain things. Learn how, like the fishing merit badge, you had to catch 3 kinds of fish, clean, chew, and eat them. Oh, cook them and eat them. What a great I think I did good on that. And I grew up as a suburban kid in Virginia. That's our house. I love the name of the street, Lancelot Way. Right. Oh, to get there, you go down King Arthur Road, you turn left on Merlin Way, you go down Stewardship Way to Lancelot, hang about. But we back up big piece of county open space. And I was totally lucky here because it was like this. Now there's a bike trail through it, but it was floodplain. It was this big wooded area, and that's where I'd go fool around. I'd go to the Boy Scouts, then I'd go down there and push trees over. I used to take over dead trees now. How many people had space or outdoor space to go fool around as a little kid? Look at that, look at that. Like, turn around, look around this room. Almost everybody was the child in the woods, fooling with stuff. And I bet you everybody has some memory of the time that you found a frog, the salamander, the baby bird, whatever, the cool. I remember no kid, 5 years old, wandered off. I still remember this too. I sat against the tree and I looked up and I was amazed at the leafy canopy. It's becoming the right word, but I can remember really little getting this stuff. Exactly. That's what we have in common. And then these organisms are really different, really important. So anybody read Rachel Carson's Sense of Wonder? This is a nice little book, isn't it? You remember who Rachel Carson was? Okay, do you know what she did that was amazing? That was part of her professional career. She wrote that book about Silent Spring while she worked for the U.S. Fish. She was a federal employee and wrote this book that challenged the chemical industry. Now, her boss let her do that without telling her to shut up. It's pretty interesting. So Rachel Carson wrote this expose that led to the banning of DDT, which allowed the pelicans to recover. Because pelicans, ospreys, bald eagles are 3 species we see every day that partly came out of Rachel Carson's work. Pretty interesting. But that sense of wonder is that basic notion of nature's importance, and I'm not using this word religiously, it's sacredness, of how important it is. If you look up the word sacred, it means something foundational to your being, and it is to everyone. And so, how about this guy? I had this little black and white camera, and that is the first selfie I ever took. The way before, what the heck? Okay, so anyway, I used to be. And I went to Colorado and got a job with the Forest Service, my first natural resource thing, and got paid to go hike around. It was so cool. So I did get to go to college. How many people went to college? Probably just about everybody here. Nice. How many people studied something to do with natural resources? Look at that. Everybody. Yeah, exactly. Bachelor of Science in Forestry and Wildlife. I'm still very proud of that with my 2.12 grade point average. I went 4 class. What was your grade? But yeah, and then I came out to Washington, and this is not, I don't, this is out of sequence, but I started working with spotted owls right when it hit the fan. Right when spotted owls were starting the controversy, they hired people as owl technicians. Anybody else an owl technician in here? Anybody know what you were? Were you a hooter? Nice. Yeah, that's what we call ourselves, the hooters. And for a while, that's how people got into wildlife, which is so cool. So there. But the spotted owl controversy, now I realize I was a field tech going out. I used to say I'd go find them, and then we'd go back and turn the information in, and then the timber guys would argue. We'd go look for them. It was really cool. But it was really revelatory because it took me into natural resource policy and conflict while doing. Okay, so all the way through this, I followed my true love, and well, you know what? Talk about another topic. That's complicated too. Right? But she has always been with me, and I bet you every single person in here really truly loves Mother Nature. You know, so nature is a thematic that we all have through this story. So, hi. This is the part you won't get in other presentations. So here's what I need. And you're going to do this for me?
Not sure if I.
What's that? Yeah, okay. I know it's a little break. But I write songs. The nature theme. It's not So there. So see, I want to They thought that. It's not true. Oh. That's so really. Because if I'm still here, all of biology is true. You know, how many groups are there in Washington? And one was, Interstate 90, just outside of Cleveland, a week. Like that. And it's not my radio home. So there's a lot to work towards. And so that's part of this whole thing where we're going. And everything's connected. So if you work in riparian restoration, wildlife biology, whatever, we work with a little segue here. So who do we serve? Because we are basically a service profession in the service of people who try to work for the environment. So we serve not only this character here, but also the owl. I think I would suggest we work with both of them. And this is reflective of what so we always do these value surveys. You guys do value surveys when you work with people? Yeah, and always they'll say something like, I want to protect the environment. I want to view a healthy forest, a healthy wildlife habitat. And way down here, we make it's interesting. So everybody likes they like nature, they like this stuff. And how do we help them do that? Small land forest planning, 3.2 regions where they are. That's our target audience. One of our major partners are the conservation districts. I think we've been here, Mike, different. That opening like this. But the DNR programs are one of the opportunities that we can always tap into. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh yeah, there we go. I'm supposed to say that right here. There. Amazing organizations. There's 44 conservation. 45. Wow. We have yes. You have I know. That explains that. There's something. They're not exactly. No. Right, so this is pretty cool. So you're all these things overlap. They're all really part of the same effort because we're all trying to help our people. These people. And I know everybody in the room did the creek for. Like Jay, working with Jay and his group out there, all the good neighbors that are doing stuff on the creek. So that's who we're trying to help. And they all appreciate nature, or they wouldn't be in the door even talking to us. And they also all want to do the right thing. So we're getting into the positive parties. Now that I bummed you out, but I heard the song. Now we're circling all the way around to the far end of it, and like mission statement stuff. All those people that we serve, if they're in the door with us, they show up, then we've got a chance to do something good to bring that. And so into the future, this is sort of interesting because what good a biologist, a restoration ecologist, a forester, everybody here's got some title that they use for themselves. I call myself a stewardship wildlife biologist. Anybody else have the word stewardship in their title? Yeah, it's a really great word that's hard to define. What's your stewardship what? Thanks. Voluntary for you're the volunteer or they are? Hopefully, nice. I like it. Hopefully, and the peeps you're working with, and we want them to do stewardship. Have you ever been challenged with having to say what stewardship was? What is it? Thanks. Something better for the environment that they want. Nice. Yeah, to get those two things to match up. Exactly. We do essential work. We do essential work that's totally worthy of our time and our energy and our spirit and everything. So that's an interesting point, because one of the side notes for this is we don't really get paid very well relative to, you know, if you want to make a lot of money, go work for Amazon or be one. How many of you have met one of these tech people that's like, oh, we just moved out here, I work for Amazon, and they're driving a big fancy vehicle and everything, and you're thinking, wait a second, you can't say to them, how much money do you make? But they won't know, and they won't. Yeah, so we can really do essential work. So this is perfect segment. Let's put this slide in, right? That we're set up to be people's guides. And so we're looked upon as being sort of, and I can't believe the word shaman, but I mean, that's somebody who has a deeper insight into things, and people expect you to know something, but definitely as guides. So when you find that stewardship client and you start talking to them, you're going to often, and I like to remind our forces, because we always say, well, what's the landowner's objective? Well, what if the landowner says, I don't know? You get paid, you get to guide them to that. You can't just tell them that you're their guide. You're like, well, you know, having vegetation along this creek might benefit the fish, like blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? What kind of vegetation? Now we're in. Excellent. Then the details. Our kids take it very seriously. And when we go visit people and we leave, they talk about it. You know, you go, and I was in campus. And you know, that night they went online, they looked you up, they looked up the movies, and everything. So, we're talking posture and riparian, so it's pretty darn cool what we get to do. And we function in this modern world. That was on the Senate got so it's like one of the 10 people. And we function in this modern world. Yes, and he's talking about the positive things. So there's the galaxy. And the next one, yes. But how do we do this? Well, this is our challenge meeting, and now we're going to get into Ronald. So we teach people good stewardship. Well, how do we do stewardship? From things like this, you're going to basically teach each other elements of good stewardship to help us know how to implement that. And we're going to find nature deficit disorder, all the do that I just started backing there. All this information working through your brain, you don't have to be Albert Einstein, but it's definitely a challenge. Yeah, look at that computer. It's a Commodore 286 from the Department. Yeah, but it is a challenge to get through this. Every situation is different. And so I think something really cool about this is trusting the solo professional. How many people go out and work with a client pretty much uniform? Yeah, a lot of us do. You're there. Pretty awesome responsibility. They're all different. Circumstances are different, but people don't really know what we do. And so that's just kind of demonstrating things. It's all full of public perception, I'm a restoration in college. Oh, really? Sitting a fire pit. No, I'm not a forest ranger. From small land and red stewardship, they can, how do you forest things? Exactly. So this is also part of what you do. And so I guess I don't know when I work in the river. Challenges, you pause into the same stuff, and there's a roadkill fishing. There's a landslide on the Chehalis River that was probably exacerbated by poor road construction and logging. And what do you do with beavers when they're clogging? So it's called, call conservation. I always prefer it. So, and you go with science. So science is always the underlying. If you have good science, you can really back up your opinion. So you got to be careful with your opinions too. Right? Something to back them up, but you want science to keep back. That I want to get a really stable. Well, I really study the parts of the solid box. So we want to use good science. Everything's going to be and so side for work, because that whole experiential thing of our love of nature, I really like that. That show of hands about how many people played in the woods as a book. Yeah, it was virtually everybody. That's pretty darn cool. But we need to keep doing that. Sometimes, and you need to find something, every one of us, that is your thing. It's your thing. And so mine is dead trees. Snag that. And a pretty interesting irony of the world is my house was burned down in 2014. I own a snag patch now. Right? I'm studying it. But dead trees are something that I study, that I have a lot of work with, that I actually have some credibility on, with snag, with snag. So there you go. Yeah, and there it is. They're so cool. There's more stuff lives in, more, okay, a live tree. A live tree has numerous defense mechanisms to keep fungus and insects out of it. So fat, bark, all that. As soon as it dies in those defenses, and it starts to change in a predictable manner. It's soft. And woodpeckers are the top of the food chain critter going in there, going after the bugs that are eating the fungus, that are in the house to jack them. And so it's just totally cool. When you see a tree that has that woodpecker hole in it, there's a bit to get it that soft. And those will be keystone habitats. Excuse me. These are major habitats produced by a keystone species. Right here on Sleeping Lady, you can see right outside those top trees. So they had a bunch of trees die from bark trees. They had their arbors at like 15, 20 feet. I was in a tree cavity right by the check-in just half an hour ago. So that's pretty cool. So you can have that as a methodology. Yeah, they're just really, really valuable. Pileated woodpeckers and wood. They make those oval holes. And so I would use this as one of my riffs with my small forest tomato. So any music. Somebody, yeah. Okay, so when you're playing a song, there's certain patterns that you use again. Or when you're teaching, you'll explain the same thing again. That's your riff. Somebody says, oh, what's so good about that tree? Well, so those are your riffs. That's your toolbox. Boom, here's my riff. And so like and I'm not supposed to talk about things that are like religious and such, but I'm an evangelical snagger. I go out of my way to present the importance of standing dead trees, hence law of students. Every chance I get. Anybody live in Calva? This is one of my converts. That's one right there. That's Chris Loggers, ironically named. Yeah. So I did Port Denise. I was putting this of you and heck out of any days at the finals. Yeah, but there's some challenges as we do this work that we just, because we love nature and there's just stuff that happens that it's like, what? And you just gotta go right around it. This guy, was outside of a meeting where we were more or less celebrating getting funding to buy a piece of Plum Creek land down near Oak Creek to fill in the gaps in the Oak Creek wildlife area. The same, he's wearing a graduation gown, hard hat. He has an invitation death super thing, and he's implying that somehow the Nature Conservancy is increasing chronic. And I asked him, can I take your picture? Yeah, sure. Anyway, there's some challenges you run into that you don't understand, and you so you find your own voice, you find your particular thing. And why do we do this for? Is it for the DNR? Is it for the Department of Life? Is it for prognostics? No. We do it because it matters. Because it matters for the future. It matters to support all the stuff that we need so much down in our value system. Nature matters. You know, our true love, Mother Nature, there she is. So here's one too. And now this, okay, all higher level supervisors, please plug your ears right now. Because you as staff people will often see these opportunities where, you know what, we ought to. We ought to. And don't be afraid to make a movement on something of merit. I mean, and obviously you work for your supervisor, but in from below. Because you're in the field, you know what needs to be done sometimes. And sometimes some of your ideas come from staff. So just suggestion, don't be afraid of it. Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, he's right, yeah.
So we do it for nature, we do it for what really matters to us. You know, we want to share our knowledge whenever we can. And you know, I just think that when the high school teachers and you come speak to my science class, you should go. And if I'm busy that day, no, you should go. And you should tell those kids, you know what, we do really cool work and we really do valuable stuff. Okay, take the time, you know, and just I already said this too. Teach people about nature because they don't know. A lot of them, you know, the whole business with the smartphone and people aren't going outside like they used to. So you can get them outside every chance you get. I think it's really, really important that we do that, especially with the kids. The kids say it's not part of the rule of life. But you know, the downside of doing classrooms is when you do one and some. Yeah, this is 8 or 9 years ago, and I was in the grocery store and I saw that. You know? No, but I walked into this. Leaders, we're visionaries, you know, and so whenever we can get out there and do this stuff, I mean, here's some kids at a summer camp who are going, and they're leaders. I think this is really important. And we're adults to do the right thing. For us to take care of nature, we're going to use every toolbox that we have, including science. But science on here. That's a good one. Remind me, that's okay too, while you're looking at people to just tell them, oh, look, you know, there goes a great little parent. Oh, here's 9 people. This wonderful, incredible planet we're in. And I think our work, you know, is a leap of faith that the world's going to be okay. Things are going to make it through this year. It's a big deal that, you know, like peregrine falcons are one of the species that almost went away. They're not way common, but they're not. Exactly. How many of the kids trying to see a ball? Exactly. They were gone. That's a good thing. That it's going to persist, it's going to flourish because we're going to have at age, whatever, sustainability, growth. Let's figure out how in the world to make this thing work. Kathy Mining's Wiggins, sorry, from San Juan Conservation District, I just put some time ago. She said she takes comfort in these two little words, geologic time, which means long vision. Think long term. And so, Kathy, I told you I put that in. And so there you go. So, yeah, think long. We're the long game. We are in the long game here. And you see it as things sit there behind us. We always have the world back to WADNR being this marvelous point of inspiration. You know, when you see something cool, learn about it. And so our task is to help nature now. And that means to get as much biodiversity and as much ecosystem function through this bottleneck, this historical bottleneck. You know, 8 billion people off the habitat, they've seen and all that down. Okay, I mean, isn't it wonderful to be in a position? Getting big and say, well, why don't you do something? Okay, I did. You know, Joe over here, I got 1,000 trees for you. We put that riparians over. We actually make 1,000 wildlife things. Task at hand, and I think we really need to remember that nature is pretty darn resilient. That nature, if you give it something to work with, it's going to come through. It's totally going to come through. But there you go. And we're working with people. Our peeps are in the game with us. They're trying to do the right thing, or they wouldn't be there. So we need to give our love of nature, and that's our particular gift. We need to give it. We can't forget, and we're going to say that Santa is going to be. You know, I know that person. So if you have more of us to do that, whatever tools you have, you know, just a little bit of humor on there in the and just open up into the arms. Like we touched on the land program, that's effective. And you also have to take care of us. You know, really be careful. Don't work. Don't work too much. But work. But this is a long game. And how many of you know somebody who's proven something is so hard to think that they just burned out? They couldn't keep up with it because so I just want that to be I'm taking this. Whatever it takes, there you go. So this is us. So we need to teach, we need to lead, we need to protect nature, and we need to do it every chance while we're at work. We need to take care of ourselves. I almost okay. You're good. So you know, I say you use what you can, and I like to say so. This is the way the thing wood and that goes before. How effective can the tree? I mean, it's supposed to do all the green. That's it. Say something. Anybody wants to, want to stop? You want to sing a song and ask a question or something?
A couple minutes for questions.
Anybody? There's my email. You got clients for me? Hit me up. I can turn you on to the DNR. So yeah, do it. Do it with passion. Do it with. Let's talk. That's the word. You know, be a little cheap. Figure out what your boundaries are within your organization and go just barely over and then back up. You don't want to get in trouble, right? But we got a lot of leeway. So we do really good work. I love the conservation districts. I constantly refer people to the cities, or they'll be like, well, what kind of grass? Well, you should call your local. So if you get some weird call from a DNR referral, it probably came from me. And so Mike, they'll all be calling you down in your area. Anything? That was great. Thank you.